So there's these two TikTok kids named Dean Withers and Parker, and these were the kids in the Jubilee video, 20 kids debate Charlie Kirk, and basically these kids were shown to be like the smartest in the group because they have like a TikTok debate career now. Well, they debated this guy on transgenderism, and I just got it on my YouTube recommended.
I see Hayden in the box, but I doubt you want to debate him.
It's your live. I'm chilling. If you want to talk to Hayden.
Only for a bit, because I know the chat's not going to want. But,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Hayden, did you want to go ahead? You can critique my view, or Dean's view.
Can I text Danny, or do you just want to talk to him?
I'm down to just talk to him.
How about that? Kenyon, thank you for the $1 on my.
Okay, Parker, do you want to do the Trump thing, or do you want to actually like go over worldviews? Because I'm down to do either one.
I'm down to just do the Trump thing if you want.
Okay, yeah, we can do that. You want me to start by saying why I voted for Trump, or do you want to start?
I could just ask you, like, do you want to give like a specific Trump economic policy you like of his that you think was good?
So I know I mentioned this yesterday. I mean, I'd say generally why I voted for him would be pro-life policies as well as just generally social conservative issues. So things like ending trans, quote unquote, healthcare for minors. So things like puberty blockers and gender affirming hormones, as well as just generally supporting more of a traditional view of the family than would be advocated for by Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
That's why a lot of people voted for Trump. Like, I mean, if you can talk about economic stuff, but for a lot of people, it was really just this simple.
Do you have an economic policy that you think is good of Trump's?
I'd say in this election, I was probably less concerned with economic policy than I was social policy.
Okay, what's social policy?
Yeah, so like the ones that I just mentioned as far as transgenderism, abortion, and then sort of the pushing of what I would advocate as sexual perversion to children as well as adults.
Okay, so do you think that trans people should be banned from the military?
Should be banned from the military? I'd say probably, because I would consider gender dysphoria or gender identity disorder to be something that is
I think one of the biggest things that Pete Hegseth was saying was he was talking about combat readiness. And he was talking about how the military needs to enhance the level of combat readiness that they have. And basically the whole transgender ban is suggesting that these people who have this mental illness are not combat ready. That's essentially the point. But I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. From all the things that you know, you can say that trans people deserve, I think the right to go and die in the military is something that a lot of them are probably okay with not having. They're probably going to pass on that one. Like, is the right to serve the country and to get blown up by a drone? Like, this is how this goes, okay? You go into the military, you get deployed, and then a drone flies over you, guns you and your entire squad down, and then some guy on a walkie-talkie is like, all clear. Your life has been reduced to an all clear. That's all it is. Like, you're literally just you're a unit in a total death count of a war that no one will even care that you died in, literally. And it's sad. And so I don't think people who are trans that don't have the right to die in another country for America are really upset that they don't have that right.
A problem with the mind up to the point where it actually causes someone to not have a proper view of reality. So
community guidelines, that was crazy. Okay, so yeah, I think that's like an insane view. So you understand that not everyone who's trans has gender dysphoria, right?
No, that's not true.
What do you mean by everyone who's trans? What is a trans person?
Yeah, like a trans person would just be someone who has an incongruence between like their sex and what's designated as typically like as their sex through the context of their gender, because the gender is going to be their commitments in accordance with particular sets of social and cultural norms. They're typically associated with the sexes.
Yeah, and basically in order to be trans, you have to have gender dysphoria. So you have to be diagnosed with that condition to be treated for that condition. This is crazy, bro. Like, he's saying you don't even have to have gender dysphoria to be trans. I thought the entire point of treating this thing was that you would have to diagnose it with this mental condition first. You know, if you have to treat schizophrenia, you have to know if the person has schizophrenia first.
Now, I don't think that like gender is defined in like a univocal sense. So like I don't think that there's like one term that applies in all cases. I think that we're going to use multiple different definitions. They're going to have
yeah, we're not talking about, you know, gender. We're talking about transgender.
Actual overlap in all the different cases that we'd bring up. But
like being transgender, in order to actually treat someone with the gender dysphoria condition, you have to diagnose them with it. And the symptoms of that are oftentimes, and you know, should be oftentimes treated by you know, doctors and people who are qualified and are not incentivized to overdiagnose it.
There's like a logically consistent social usage.
Also, I wanted to add this on here. You said that, you essentially said that being trans is a mental illness. Can you name one major institution, medicine or science that would consider being trans as a mental illness?
I mean, I'd have to take a look, but even if we were to say that, say, all of the major medical organizations didn't consider it a mental illness, I think anyone who's rational can recognize that a man who thinks he's a woman or a woman who thinks he's a man has a problem of the mind where they can't actually conform their mind to what's real.
No,
Okay, so
actually,
the
I think
issue-
you're the one with the issue here because I just described to you that they're just using language differently than you. So what you're doing is you're superimposing your language.
It's not a language thing, actually. It's really not. That's fucking stupid. It's not a language thing at all. Like, I hate to say this, and this is just the reality of this, right? I don't hate to say this. I should not say that, because I have no issue saying this. If anyone who I knew, who I'm friends with, that's a guy, decides that they want to cut their dick off, like, it really simply put, and I would be sympathetic toward them. I wouldn't start bullying them, right? I would genuinely say, like, that's unfortunate that you view things that way. It's unfortunate that you've come to that point and that's what you want to do. I think that that's sad, and I hope that you are able to treat yourself in a way to where you no longer want to do that. That's what I would say, right? And I don't think it's a language thing at all. Where does the language factor in there? I think it's a mental thing. I think the mental health of somebody who is, looking to do that sort of thing is obviously not good.
To mean what their language is. So
Yeah.
you're saying they're using a biological sense of the term man, right, or the term woman, when they're not using a biological sense of the term man or woman. So
Yeah.
actually the one that would be delusional here.
Isn't man or woman like always biological? He's saying that he's using the word biological. You're using the word man in a biological sense. You can just drop the biological. Like, a man is just like, a man is a biological man. Like, it's saying like a squarish square.
Here would be you because you're self-prescribing an equivocation fallacy.
Yeah,
Okay,
like
so-
we could just replace those words with your definitions to see if they're true for a trans individual. So you just said a trans woman is
He's
a
winning the
man that
2v1, by the
thinks
way.
they're a woman. By man you mean male, and by woman you mean female. Okay, so in other words, you're saying that a trans woman is a male that thinks they're a female.
Not in every case. Can I clarify?
Now here's the zinger: trans women do not think they're female.
I just said not in every case. Can I clarify then what I meant?
Of course.
Okay, so sometimes you can, and I had some debates last week on the trans issue, so I have talked to some people who are transgender. So it's not always that they actually believe that they can become the opposite sex. In fact, sometimes, as you mentioned, oftentimes, possibly, they actually acknowledge that they can't become the opposite sex, but they believe that they can essentially put on a costume and make themselves appear more as the opposite gender because they have some discomfort in their biological sex. Does that sound an accurate description of what trans people would typically?
This fucking dork does this so often in his debates where he'll raise his hand in the middle of someone talking. I don't know how to say it other than the word dork. This is the dorkiest thing I've ever seen. It is so middle school debate class, debate club, after school extra credit for the resume. Kindergarten corny ass, I swear. When you're done, I have a question. Like, put your fucking hand down, dude. Put your hand down. Let him talk. Let him finish. Oh my god.
Go through? No? Okay,
I
what
wouldn't
do
say
you object to?
costume. Like, can I ask you a question? Like, do you think you using the term Hayden as your name is like costume?
No, that's
Why not?
because that's my actual name.
Because
Okay,
what
but
do you
that's
mean?
Like, a good example of that was if he went by Hay instead of Hayden, that would be a nickname, a abbreviation or a costume of his name.
By
socially
actual
constructed.
name there.
Real.
Yeah, it's socially
In
constructed.
reality.
Per stay
Wait,
there.
okay.
Yeah,
well,
wait,
I mean, if your
so
name is in
socially-
reality, then gender identity is in reality because both names and gender identity would be relating to social constructs. In the same
this
way,
sense.
you believe that your name is indicative of a description of your sense of self, right? We believe that gender identity is indicative of a description and sense of self. And
But his name being Hayden isn't socially constructed. Like, like he said his name is Hayden and therefore his name is Hayden. Like, his mom decided that that's what they're going to call him. And like, the society did not construct that his name is Hayden. His mom did.
we deploy names.
Like society decided that we would give people names in the same way that we'll give any single thing a name. But like, I don't think, is that what he's trying to say?
Right, to yield.
Because then at that point, you're just saying, like, gender exists in the same way that pizza exists, in that they both exist. Like, okay.
A construct in society to understand one another, the same way we deploy gender identity as a construct in society to understand one another and to better understand ourselves.
Okay, so one question I asked last week when I had conversations like this that helped me better understand what the view was of the people I was engaging with was the question, what is a woman? It's not meant as a gotcha, but it does help me better understand what you guys are actually trying to get at when you say terms like women and gender identity. So can you guys just let me know what you think a woman is?
Yeah, of course. I actually told you earlier what I think, but I'll describe again
Okay.
because it doesn't seem like you heard what I said. So a woman would be an adult human person that's committed towards the social and cultural norms that are typically associated with the female sex. And I don't think that any of these terms that we would use to define what a woman is or what a man is are univocal, meaning that there's not one usage of a term that we would apply in all circumstances. There are going to be multiple different definitions that we operate and use in different circumstances, right? In order to be able to like apply that someone's a woman, or apply that someone's a man.
Jesus Christ. So he's basically saying that the definition can morph into anything at any point when I want it to. So there's not really a definition.
All circumstances that we would deem it to be the case.
Crazy.
We're going to use multiple different definitions.
Okay.
So it's not univocal, right? There's multiple different senses that we use all the time. There's a biological sense of the term that makes sense. There's a sociological sense of the term that makes sense. It doesn't have to be necessary and sufficient.
Okay, so just a follow-up question on that to make sure that I kind of understand that better, or at least to the best of my ability here. If we both saw, me and you, Parker, were standing at the road at a crosswalk. We saw someone cross the street. You said a woman crossed the street. And what would make you say a woman there versus a man?
Well, typically it would be like an assumption based on certain characteristics that we would typically associate with the sex.
Yeah.
So,
right. So, but like then I would clarify with them, and
That's
they'd
true.
be able to like clarify to me. Oh, I have commitments with like to be in alignment with these particular traits as a prescription of my identity, and like that would make sense to me within that respect. If I was possibly wrong.
so it's based on
so,
self-identity?
The
I just told you
position-
commitments towards social and cultural norms are typically associated with the female sex, but again, it's not univocal, so it doesn't apply in every single
This
circumstance.
guy's loving this univocal word.
There could be some circumstances where I would use a different definition to apply to a particular individual.
Okay, so you're saying that the definition is not univocal. Okay. However, you are saying that the one that we are using the majority of the time is one that you will not say is the overall definition. So, although it's used for most people in this certain way, for the instances that we're not using it that way, we need to factor it in to the overall definition. Even though what you're basically saying is that you're going to use the majority usage definition for 99% of the time.
And so if there was a biological female who didn't identify as trans, but just wasn't committed to the norms of the female sex, was, say, for example, a tomboy, and was actually behaving more so like what would typically be male behavior than typical female behavior, would that person be a woman? Because that's what their biological.
Which is a great question, because if he's saying that if you are a guy who's in accordance with social or cultural characteristics typically associated with the female sex, right? Like if I wear a dress, which is a trait associated with the cultural female sex, then I am therefore displaying things that could be in accordance with womanhood and therefore make me female, which is retarded.
Sexes and what they identify as, even though they don't fit the norms with the female sex, or would they be a man because they actually would fit the norms associated with the male sex?
No, so again, if it depends on what their commitments are in accordance with, they have a desire to be in accordance with a particular set of traits as a prescription.
You see how incoherent that is? Like, if everything depends on everything, then like nothing is actually in order. Things have to be organized in order for efficiency. If you have everything put into a folder in Google Drive that fits where it's supposed to be, you'll have the easiest time finding your files. If people are put into categories based on certain traits, and there is none of this like, it depends nonsense, it makes society flow infinitely easier because we have agreed upon definitions that seem to fit basically 99% of the time, and it works, and it has worked.
Of identity within that case of like a, you'd said, quote unquote tomboy, right? You understand in that case that they specifically have a desire to be in accordance with particular sets of social and cultural norms that are typically associated with the female sex as a prescription of their identity, and the traits that they have specifically associated with like the male sex, right, is not in alignment in terms of their identity, but rather like in terms of gender identity, but rather just particularly an expression of their gender.
So,
right? I don't think that it is the case that someone who is a man or is a woman has to always engage in particular behaviors that are typically associated with the sex.
And
right?
Ashani, thank you for the $20 on PayPal. I appreciate you for the love, Ashani. W's for Ashani in the chat.
So a woman is someone who identifies as a woman then?
No, I just told you. It's again, a woman is an adult human person that has a commitment to be in accordance with a particular set of social and cultural norms that are typically associated with the female sex.
Okay, but here's the problem though. In the case
and again, I told you it's not univocal, so it's not going to be applicable in every single circumstance.
Oh, so
right?
it's just identity then, isn't it?
What are you talking about?
Because when I give the
Of course we're talking
example,
about gender identity.
so when I give the example of the tomboy, right? That tomboy, she's a female, and she's not committed to the norms associated with the female sex. So is she a man or a woman?
Wait, they are. When you say committed, they have a desire to be in accordance with those particular set of traits in terms of a prescription of their identity.
No. She's like, for example, in the case of biological female who isn't committed to the norms associated with the female sex, she just wants to live her
So are
life,
they
and she happens.
non-binary?
can you let me finish? She's not committed to the norms associated with the female sex. She just wants to be who she is. And who she is just happens, her personality tends to align more with the norms, the cultural norms of the male sex. Is she a man or a woman? Because by your definition, she'd be a woman. She would be a man.
What are their desires to be in accordance with the particular set of social and cultural norms in terms of a prescription identity?
Basically, in the tomboy example, a woman who is wearing t-shirts and is dressing and saying the word bruh is behaving in a way that socially would be more like a guy. And by Parker's definition, if this person wants to behave like a guy, then they are therefore a guy. This is a good rebuttal, because what he's basically saying is like, let me give you an example of the thing that you said could make it so that someone is the different gender and tell you how ridiculous it sounds. Because if the tomboy is biologically a woman, and in terms of their gender identity, you know, they are fine with being referred to as she, her, but they behave in a way that is in accordance with social and cultural norms associated with manhood, then therefore they would fall underneath the man umbrella, and by being underneath that umbrella, Parker is saying you are a man, which is crazy and actually doesn't work for actual human beings. That is the point. And he's going to have a very hard time responding to this. Let's see what he says. And honestly, I'm just going to say this, right? I think if you, at the end of the day, you want to defend this so much, and like, if this is what you're going to actually talk about, if you're Parker, you're going to lose this debate, right? This whole thing started because he was asking him, why did you vote for Trump? And we've gotten a long distance from that original question, because now we're just talking about social policy and social conservatism as for why this guy voted for Trump. And now we're talking about trans stuff, okay? He cannot give a good argument against what he is saying. His best bet would be to shift away from this and talk about economic stuff and different social stuff in order to actually have a conversation that he might be able to win, or a debate that he should, might be able to win. He's not going to win this debate. He will not win this debate. He will not win this debate because it is an unwinnable debate.
Which one?
You will never win a debate where you basically cannot tell that you will never win a debate. This is the reality. If you want to talk about the culture war and why it's come to the point where Trump has won on cultural issues, it is because people like this cannot tell you what a woman is. It's really that simple. And the question has been beaten to death. People are so fucking tired of hearing, what is a woman? What is a woman? And the reason they're tired of hearing this is because they know that their answer is bad. There's not been a good enough answer. They're tired of being asked the question that they know looks to them. They're tired of responding to a question that is embarrassing for them to answer. That's what this is. At the same time, their answer hasn't changed.
She doesn't care. What for example,
they're non-binary? They're non-binary?
No. Can I add on a part here? I want to add on. So I feel like what you're offering to us is a little bit of an equivocation fallacy. The reason I say that is because you predicate this individual as a tomboy, right, while also denying any womanhood to this individual in the sense of alignment with social norms typical of that of females. So the issue that we're seeing
that's what a tomboy is.
Let's just take a female, right, that aligns with none of the social norms, characteristics, categories, etc., typical of that of the female sex, and aligns with many of that typically associated with the male sex. So we would expect this individual to self-identify as a trans man or non-binary.
No, we wouldn't. That's fucking insane. This is a tomboy. That's it. This is why they're losing. They can't just be like, oh, that's what a tomboy is. A tomboy is a girl who just doesn't, necessarily dabble in femininity and isn't as outwardly expressive to femininity as the normal standard female woman does, right? That's what happens. And they're basically denying that person womanhood. They're basically saying that this is what a trans man looks like. You're not a tomboy, you're a trans man. That is insane. That is ridiculous, that is delusional, and that is a losing argument.
Binary, if this individual does not identify as a trans man or non-binary, meaning that they'd identify as a woman, well, the question would be in that circumstance, what do they mean when they say woman? And if all they mean by the term woman there is a female, this would just relate back to the conversation we're having right now, that we see gender identity to be distinct from sex.
Okay, I just want to recognize something. I hope you're able to recognize it too. Based on what you just said there, Dean, under what you just said, you would say that a biological female who's more so the cultural norms that she generally purveys are more associated with the male sex than the female sex, and that you actually think that she would have to identify as a trans
so that's
man.
actually not what I said.
That is exactly what he said.
I'll repeat it, but I just want to clarify that's not what I said. So first of all, you said aligns more with the categories typical of that of men compared to women. I said aligns with no categories that typical of women and many categories that typical of men. And I didn't say that they would definitively be.
Well, that's what a
trans
tomboy
man or
is.
I said that we typically expect them to be. right? And there's
Yeah, that's insane. Based on your definition, that is ridiculous. That's not what people actually think. People should not and do not look at tomboys and think that they are transgender men. That's not what happens. I think it's pretty obvious to tell when a woman who is dressed like a man is a woman who's dressed like a man, and there's actually a woman, let's just say, who's becoming transgender because let's just say that they are growing facial hair, right? They have had their breasts removed. They are visibly masculine. They are visibly portraying traits that are genetically, or biologically, I should say, only capable to achieve through the male hormone testosterone, like a full beard, you know? Or surgical intervention, like breast removal. These are all things that you can tell the difference of.
there's a difference there. I'm not placing any prescriptive claim insofar as what they are.
So you would
I'm placing a descriptive, a
And this is
descriptive
fucking,
claim
this is
on what I would
retarded.
expect them.
So you would expect a tomboy
wait,
to identify as a man.
Hayden, can I give you a prescription here?
Also,
So,
the
like,
predication of the word tomboy would necessarily entail alignment with categories that typical of the female sex. I just want to clarify that that is the equivocation in your question, but go ahead, Parker.
Yeah, I have feminine traits, but I don't have like a desire to be in accordance with those particular traits as a prescription of identity. So I could have more feminine traits than masculine traits, but still have a desire to be in accordance with a particular set of social and cultural norms that typically associate with the male sex in terms of an identity. But
Are
not
all these dudes gay? Probably.
any of the feminine traits that I have.
And if it's just
having
based on a
more of
desire, it's
particular
self-ID.
trait- So again, when you say desire to be in accordance with
Hello,
these particular
word
things,
salad.
self
Yeah, that's another thing. I think another thing is that the reality is, let's pretend that they're right. They're not right. They are not even close to being correct. Their definitions are faulty, they're fallacious, and they're not true. Okay? But let's say they were completely true, flawless logic, the reasoning is good as well. Ultimately, let's just say that they're right, okay? For most people, even if you're correct, it is just too much. There is way too much going on in your definitions that even if they work functionally as definitions, that they do not work on people as definitions. If you're trying to define something to a person who is okay with sitting down and listening to the reasoning behind your definitions for like an hour, maybe you got somebody, maybe you got a buying customer. For most people, they just want simple working definitions that allow them to cruise through life easily and efficiently. Even if you are giving them an accurate definition, you are not giving them one that allows them to cruise through life easily and efficiently. And that's why you lose. Now, that's why you lose in that made up pretend world. The reason you lose in the real world is because you have all of those problems and you're also wrong. So that's something that is worth noting as well. Damn, what the fuck? This guy literally made his profile picture the thing I just did while I paused the fucking video. Dude, look at this. That was me 5 seconds ago. That was 5 seconds ago I did this. How did he do that fast? That was 5 seconds ago I made that face. What the fuck? Wait, how did you do that?
ID, you're trying to say it's self-ID because then you're going to bring up the fact that someone could lie.
Mod him? I'm scared.
But my state is in a position where it's not subject to that same sort of critique because it's based upon the characteristics that they have and not whether or not they're prescribing it to you.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
let me just test this then to see if you're consistent with that. If you have
W. Sassy Parker. Yo, these bitches are annoying as shit, bro. Everyone in this chat who consistently views this guy is just like insufferable. Like, you're insufferable.
someone who their whole life
If you're going to ask me if in this
Why is it your business, Hayden? Bruh. So essentially, I mean, this person isn't debating, so it's probably not worth that much time to get into it. But oh my goodness, it is absolutely crazy. It's crazy to say that this person, it's not their business. Bro, these people make it their business. You understand that it's been made everyone's business because you've introduced a society where you have to introduce yourself with your pronouns and you have to disclose what you need, what you want to be referred to by, because it's no longer acceptable to assume based on these standards that have been set in place and functional for decades. It's not really your business. Why do you care? I care because it's been made my business through the decade-long push to normalize delusion.
specific circumstance would it be the case that this definition would apply? I wouldn't always have to apply the definition that I just provided in every single scenario, right? I provide it in some scenarios. It's
so
not
you change your
univocal.
definition when it suits your argument.
Yes, that's how it.
So you changed.
Hayden, I know you're laughing there, but that's how we use language. So I use different definitions in different scenarios, and they're going to have conceptual overlap. When I define what a chair is or what a table is, in every single hypothetical scenario I give you, you're not going to use the same definition to define the chair or the table. right? That's how we typically define ordinary things, or how we...
Even this argument is so bad because he's saying that, like, oh, I might be referring to chair in a different, like, when I'm saying the word chair, it might mean something different given the circumstance. But it's like, okay, but it's never going to mean gun. The guy who did a school shooting used a semi-automatic chair. Like, no one's ever going to say that. Like, no one would say that. And that's the difference, is that, like, yeah, chairs might have, like, a 2 or 1% definition change when you're talking about them in different contexts. You know, maybe like like this chair, it's got wheels. Some chairs don't have wheels. That makes sense. But this chair will never be a gun, okay? This chair will never be capable of shooting bullets, right? And some person might hear my argument and say, wait a second, some chairs have wheels, some chairs have legs, some girls have cocks, and some girls have vaginas. Except, here's the thing, okay? This chair, I'm still able to sit on it. The other chair, I'm able to sit on it. Use the sit on it as the parallel for, like, giving birth and having periods and getting pregnant and having XX chromosomes. You understand? Bit different.
Use language. We're not
So that
going to
violates
have a
the law of
univocal
identity.
usage.
Is carpet a table?
Listen, can I please finish? We're not going to have a univocal usage of a particular definition that applies in every single scenario. We're going to have conceptual overlap of multiple different definitions, and there's nothing logically incoherent about that.
It violates the
That's
law of
just how
identity.
language use- No, it doesn't.
It does. Is carpet a table?
Because I never made the claim. I never made the claim that the particular definition of the term that I'm using, I use in every single scenario.
Can we also just put it out there that, like, this actually is something that you do with your Trinity? You don't hold a univocal definition of the term God.
What do you mean by that? Trinity has an objective definition. You understand that, right?
It actually doesn't.
Oh, I don't
Is
even know what that means.
Really?
And we're talking about Christianity now.
Is Jesus a 100% God?
What
Yes.
is that shit called? Gish galloping or whataboutism? Or it's one of these logical fallacy things. I'm not one of these like debate bro people. I mean, I know a little bit of like logical fallacies. I know the basic ones. But like when you're just it's got to be gish galloping, right? Is that what that is? When you're just like a gish gallop is a rhetorical technique in a debate. Actually, this could be it, right? A gish gallop is a rhetorical technique which a person in a debate attempts to overwhelm an opponent by presenting an excessive number of arguments without regard for their accuracy or strength. So it's not really an excessive amount of arguments, but it's completely unrelated, right? It's when you throw a bunch of stuff at your opponents. I mean, so this isn't a bunch of stuff, but it's essentially something that's completely unrelated from the topic, and it's just random. It's the random bullshit fallacy.
Okay.
It's the random nonsense fallacy, the yapping fallacy, the complete nothing burger fallacy.
The Father.
Red herring, that's what it is. Red herring. Red herring. Red herring fallacy. That's what it is. The red herring fallacy is a logical fallacy that involves intentionally introducing an irrelevant topic or distraction to divert attention from the original argument or issue. Exactly. Thank you for the guy who wrote that. That's completely what happened. Yeah, it's just unrelated.
100% God.
Yes.
Okay, phenomenal. Is Jesus distinct and separate from that of the Father?
Is Jesus distinct and separate from that of the Father? Jesus is distinct from the Father, yes.
And this would violate the transversive law of logic, because you're
No.
saying Jesus equals 100% God, Father equals 100% God, substitute the terms for the definitions, 100% God and 100% God, and you're saying 100% God is not equal to 100% God.
So first of all, I'll give the definition of Trinity, and then I'm going to try to bring it back to the Trump and transgender thing, just because that was the topic that we kind of agreed on. Is that okay?
Well, I mean, like, the reason I brought this topic up is because it's conceptually related to the
Yeah.
to the unificality of the way that
What
you
does
define
Jesus
your
have to
terms.
do with
Again,
this?
I'm happy to
To
Nothing.
hold a logically consistent position
Literally
on the Trinity,
nothing.
you have to reject the univocal.
Why are we talking
usage of
about
the term
gods now?
God, and you imply
these guys
a
suck at
separation
debating?
and a distinction.
I'm a terrible debater, though, mind
God
you.
the Father
I can't
and
debate,
God
but
the
these
Son.
guys are still bad.
And so far,
It's like saying I can't rap, but you know Miles is still bad, you know?
as them sharing like the same spirit of God, but they're both uniquely God and a different usage of that term.
Okay, so once again, what I'm going to do here is I'll try to explain Trinity, and then I want to go back to the Trump thing, because that was kind of what we agreed on towards the beginning. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
I just wanted,
sounds good.
It's abstractly related
Okay.
to demonstrate Parker's point.
Okay. Yeah, so when we talk about God in the Trinity, there is only one being of God, but that being exists in the form of three different persons. Now, I do want to try to bring it back to the trans thing. So an example, when I talk about us having objective criteria for words, we have to have objective criteria for words in order to have meaningful communication. Would you guys agree with that? Oh my goodness, and the live ended.
They kicked
Since
you?
the live ended, I thought I would take a few moments to explain why I believe Parker's definition of the word woman requires
Wait, what?
female tomboys to be considered men.
and why the Trinity
So wait, I'm confused. They just ended the debate?
is not
Wow,
a
what a bunch of
contradiction, even though competing
Wait,
definitions of the word
wow.
woman are a contradiction. Parker said that, quote, a woman would be an adult human person that is
TikTok
committed
banned him?
towards the
Oh,
social and
wow.
cultural norms that are typically associated with the female sex. If we flip this for the definition of man, I would assume that his definition of man would then be the following.
Literally ran.
An adult human person that is committed towards the social and cultural norms that are typically associated with the male sex.
Yes.
Now, let's apply his definition of woman and man to the following female. Sarah is a logging worker, drives a Ram 3500, has short hair, engages in rough and tumble play with children, watches football while slamming beers on Sunday afternoons, wears no makeup, chews tobacco, played tackle football in high school, and only wears straight cut jeans with a flannel that has both sleeves cut off.
Yes.
She has no plans to change her behavior or appearance since she is completely comfortable defying stereotypical gender norms. She is proud to be female, has always identified as a woman, and plans to always identify as a woman. In this case, Sarah is an adult human person
AI
who is
art
committed to the
goated.
cultural and social norms that are typically associated with the male sex, which, if we assume that Parker's definition of man mirrors his definition of woman, would make her a man, even though she identifies as a woman and is female. And Parker can't simply get around this by arguing that we can use the word woman one way in the context of a person's gender identity and another way in the context of describing someone we see walking down the street. If someone told Parker that they are identifying as a woman, he would need to know what they are identifying as. For example, if a woman told Parker that she identifies as a woman, what would Parker take that to mean? If he would take it to mean that she is, quote, committed towards the social and cultural norms that are typically associated with the female sex, end quote, then it shows that he is only really using one definition of the word woman. And his definition makes it so that females who identify as women but are committed towards the social and cultural norms that are typically associated with the male sex would be considered men. Now I want to explain why the Trinity is not a contradiction, even though competing definitions of the word woman are.
Okay, I don't really care about the religious stuff because it's just unrelated, but yeah, I think he won the debate 100%. Really good. The chat is so insufferable as well, dude. Oh my god. The people in that chat, bro. Go off. Eat him up. Oh, just kill me. Good video, though.